Hi,
Reverend
Gabrielle.
Bernie.
How you
Thank
doing, Gabrielle?
yes, thank you for your tremendous patience as I took a half hour to figure out my microphone difficulties. Woes of technology. So thank you also for agreeing to do this without knowing much about it. I'm still learning what it is too, but my hopes is that this will be a space where people can hear from others who are also on this spiritual path of just continual exploration and journey and growth and all the things that come with it. And that was really helpful for me early on, was hearing from people who are also doing that. And so I'll introduce myself real quick. My name is Gabrielle and I'm a medium, and I've been seeing the souls of those who are no longer in body since my earliest memories. And more recently, I channel the collective Ayana, and there's a whole lot of stuff with that I'll talk about later. But I met you, Reverend Bernie, I think about a year and a half ago now, and you were tremendously helpful on this path for me because you had a very lovely open mind to everything and were very approachable and shared your wisdom. And I learned early that you have an incredible wealth of knowledge. So that is why I wanted to invite you here today, so you can share some of that. So do you want to tell people more about you?
Well, thank you, Gabrielle. My name is Bernie Zurn. The Reverend is just a title because I found that it opens some doors. I've been a student of metaphysics and Eastern religion and religions of all kinds since 1970. I have a degree in East Asian religions from the University of Illinois. I've been teaching meditation since the 1970s, and I've been teaching Qigong and having online meditation classes for the last several years. I also work with clearing entities and clearing spaces remotely. That's done exclusively by referral. It's not something that I advertise, but when I receive referrals, then I contact the individual and work with them that way. I worked for 40 years in IT from 1980 through 1980, no, 2008. So no, 2018. My goodness, can't remember my own history here.
What is time?
Yeah, 1980 to 2018. So that's what 38 years. And I worked 2 years work study in college in IT for the Veterans Administration. I have a deep and abiding interest in mystical religions, more the mystical side than the orthodox side. The orthodox side often covers what the real truth is. I studied all the major religions, the big ones: Christianity, Judaism, Islam, Taoism, the Hindu yoga systems, Buddhism, and many what you would nowadays call shamanic religions. How individuals are sensitive and become aware of the spirit world in a more tribal organization.
Mm-hmm. So, just, I don't want to jump in too quick, but so what led you to that curiosity? Was that something innate that you've had forever, or did you have something that sparked that then led to decades of studying? And
well, I trace the beginning back to what I term a spiritual intervention. I was raised in a Roman Catholic household, went to Mass every Sunday, First Communion, Confirmation. Then when the church opened it up to lay participation, I also read in the Roman Catholic Mass, the epistles, which were the letters from Paul. I attended Sunday school and different things for many years. And one day in September, my parents dropped me off for college. Syracuse University. It was September of 1970. And I went to sign up for courses. And I met with my guidance counselor, and by golly, if he didn't sign me up for all the same stuff I took in high school, and I was already bored with high school. I wanted to be done with high school and everything associated with it. But I signed up for these courses, and I thought, well, I'm going to take something that I want. I want a religion course. And there was 3 courses open. The first one was History of Islam, and it was part 2 of a 2-part course, so I really couldn't just jump into that. The other one was the Christianity of St. Paul, and after having read the epistles of St. Paul for 2 years every Sunday, I didn't want that. The only other course that was open was a course in Far Eastern religion. And that course opened my mind to possibilities I had no idea existed. It was like Spirit dropped in and said, Bernie, you're going to go here. And I went to these classes, and one of the first ones, they showed an overhead of this yogi standing up with his hands out, and there's light coming out of his hands and light coming out of his head, and all his different chakras. I didn't know that term then, but all his different chakras were lit up and streaming white light. And I looked at it and I said, I want that. I don't have to believe in Jesus. I can become like Jesus. And that was the transformational moment for me. From that time forward, I stopped going to all my other classes within a month. I was just bored to tears. It's like, yeah, high school, a do-over. Well, I hated it when I was doing it. Why did I sign up for it? That class I stayed with. It was illuminating. And that was the beginning of my spiritual investigations. As a child, I later learned that I had been psychic all my life, but I just didn't know that that was the word. Mm-hmm. I sensed the feelings of the people around me when they were happy, when they were sad. When things happened to me, I could sense the energy coming in. I just thought this was normal. Mm-hmm. I had no idea that there was a label for it. So that's the beginning of things for me. Then I was in the Army, and during that time, I spent a lot of time alone. I really didn't link in a lot with the people around me to some extent. And that deepened my interest. I got out of the Army, went to college for 18 months, and realized I was just spinning my wheels. I didn't know what I wanted, where I wanted to go, and I was using up my GI Bill benefits. So I took a year off, traveled around the United States, and then came back to college, same college, University of Illinois. And I made a decision to major in religious studies and anthropology. And a lot of it was inspired by my brother, my younger brother, David, barely graduated high school. He didn't like it any more than I did. And after he left high school, he got a series of jobs that had increasing levels of responsibility until he was a national sales rep. And I looked at him and his career and I said, oh, college is not the key to a job unless you're studying something specific, like you're going to be a doctor or a lawyer or something like that, an accountant or CPA. College is the key in that respect, but I had no interest in those areas. Mm-hmm. And that actually freed me up to do what I wanted to do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I wanted to go back real quick. Part of this Ascension chat and the questions that I keep getting are like, how do I know when I'm connecting to spirit and what does that feel like? And I saw that shift in you when you were talking about your aha moment where you walked in that class and you said it was like spirit started talking to you.
Yes.
That. And the way that I feel it, which I've told people, is it's like just the most incredible kind of, it's like an excitement mixed with peace. So there's no stress, there's no apprehension about what's coming. It's just, you know that what's coming next is going to be good when you're on that path. And so it's this knowingness, and then there's the physical things of like body chills and that. But what does that feel like for you, like physically in your body, to help people understand kind of when, it's different for all of us, but what did it feel like for you?
Well, at that time, I wasn't particularly sensitive to my bodily sensations. I was more tuned into mental and emotion. It took until I started studying Tai Chi Chuan in the late 1970s before that kind of kicked in. My feeling at that time was, yes, this is it. There was an absolute certainty.
Mm-hmm.
And that certainty carried me through all the dark and all the light times, and carries me to this day, that this is it. This is it. This is what I need to be doing. This is what I want to be doing. So physical sensations came later, and the trick for me, the physical sensations can be somewhat ambiguous. They can be internal or they can be external or some combination of both. The external ones, we pick up on energy from the world around us all the time, constantly. And the internal ones, then I have to kind of create a border, an edge, if you will, so that I can discern what's internal and what's external. Nowadays, when I have an internal experience, it's often a feeling of bliss in the body. That's the only way to describe it. It's more than happiness. It's more than joy. It's a feeling of such extreme well-being and love that I'm almost immobilized. I have to stop and sit and tune into it, immerse myself in it, and let it permeate my being. Physical, emotional, mental, spiritual.
Yeah, I've found that when I hit that point, which doesn't happen often for me, where it's just that bliss, I actually get tears coming. It's like the tears flowing, and that only happens to me now, usually when I'm on my own, as you said, in that personal space where, and it's, I found too, it's there's it force cannot be applied to this in any way. It has to be just a relaxation and an acceptance and an allowance, and know that there's no way to assert yourself to this point of reaching free flowing energy, because once you put that energy into it, then you get a block. And so I've met people recently who are like, I try so hard. I sit down and I meditate and I meditate and I meditate and I try to clear my mind, and I feel nothing. And it's that intense driving nature is not where you're going to find the connection. It's in the moments of the relaxation and the moments of stepping back and just allowing. And I think that starting to feel that free flowing energy coming in is when it becomes recognizable to a level of consciousness where we can actually perceive it. So
Yeah, that's an excellent point. It's more let than do.
right.
Let it happen. And it takes us, meditation is a good practice as long as it's done with an open mind. There's a book called Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind. And in this book, the author makes a distinction between the mind of a beginner and the mind of a knower. And for the beginner, all things are possible, all things are open. But for the person who knows a lot, then they have expectations. Well, when I meditate, it has to be this way, it has to be that way, it has to be some other way. And so, like you said, they're asserting themselves, they're inserting their thoughts, their feelings, their expectations into the practice, instead of the practice leading them to different thoughts, different emotions, different insights.
Right. Yeah, no, that's a great point too. The other thing that I've found is that it's so hard, it's challenging for myself, I think, and many, to go from our daily lives that are very loud and full of constant input than to try to sit quietly in a dark room. And so I find that like kind of a stair step process down helps, of getting into, beginning a process prior to actually trying to still the mind. And that can involve quieting the senses in multiple different ways. So like I like to have tea before, and that kind of is a trigger also. It's almost a Pavlovian response at this point, where if I have this, I know what's coming next. So setting up the routine prior, and then also to not formulate a picture in your mind of what it should be based on what other people have told you it should be, because I do think it's incredibly individualized. And so for me, I actually can't do silent meditation at this point because I hear the voices of dead people and I don't have that boundary up well enough at this point. And so I have to have some quiet music, and I choose, like flute music in the background, and then my mind can, stick on that. And that's where I find it. If I have complete silence, it's, I hear too many things, not my own thoughts. Thankfully, I can quiet those, but I hear other people's. And so I have to have a sound in the background, and I'm waiting for the day that doesn't need to happen.
Well, the Sufis say there's as many paths to God as there are hearts of people. Everybody's path is unique.
Yeah, I love that.
And it took me a while to discover that when I first started studying the yoga systems. Now, it's important to make a distinction between what we call yoga today, which is mostly postures, and the yoga philosophy, which has 8 different parts to it, of which postures is only one. For me, yoga was, at first I thought it was just an absolute guideline. I do A, B, C, D, and E, and I'm going to get enlightened.
Yeah.
Period. And it took some years for me to realize that it wasn't a cookbook. It was more a map. So if I want to go from, say, Portland, Oregon, where I live, to Salt Lake City, Utah, it's 600 and some odd miles. The interstate is probably the fastest way, but it's not the only way.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a lot of alternate paths and different ways to arrive there. And once I understood that, then I was a little more open and freer in understanding the practice. And that's when I started to make, well, real progress, if you will, because that's when the insights started to come. And that's when I started feeling energy in my body. The first time I felt energy in my body was when I was sitting in silent meditation. And suddenly I felt all this energy in my body. And when I moved my hands, I could feel this. And it was a pretty amazing experience. But to your point, you need one set of circumstances. I need another. It's okay.
Right. Yeah, I want to, so during our times that we've met prior to this, you have really beautifully and actually very approachably laid out some of the mind, body, soul connection. And it's something that I think we all know is there, and we feel it, and we go through, a roller coaster of ups and downs of knowing that our mind, what's happening in our mind affects our physical body, and what happens spiritually affects our mind. But I was wondering if you could kind of share some of what you've learned about that, and that would be helpful probably for people a little bit earlier on the path, of learning how they're all interconnected and interwoven and all of that.
Well, that's a big topic.
It is a big topic.
So I'll do my best to give some high-level summary. First of all, the only distinction between our highest self, which I call the I am presence, some call it the monad, it's the part of us that's a part of God. If I may use the word God, I usually call it the infinite divine presence, because I don't know the names anymore. Everybody's got a name, and the name puts some energy on it. But it's as if our experience is like an inverted triangle, and the I am presence is at the top with the widest range of experience and knowledge and insight and emotion. And the human body is at the smallest point, the tip of it. In essence, the only distinction between the highest spiritual self and the lowest physical body is a matter of the frequency of vibration in the material substance. The monad has a very refined, very high level of vibrations, very broad. The human physical self has a very narrow range of vibration. In an ordinary person has a very narrow range of vibration. The physical body is dense. It's made up of gases, water, physical elements, bones, fingernails, and whatnot, and also something we call mind, which is an implantation from the higher realms where the brain then becomes the processing center. As a physical being, I'm already connected to the emotional and mental planes. Some people call the emotional plane the astral. Well, there's a little bit of a problem with that term, so I call it the emotional. So we have thoughts, we have feelings, we have actions, the things the body does, and we have sensations. Some people call these feelings, but that's a kind of an ambiguous term because then it gets mixed up with emotions. And so they're actually sensations. The physical body, the energy in the physical body can be elevated by degrees to become so powerful that it is a direct instrument of the I am presence, the monad. Jesus was an example of that. Buddha was another example of that. They were demonstrating what the possibilities of a physical human being are. In that respect, I think we're all in the special group, special needs group. The divine keeps sending us teachers, and we keep kind of, well, okay, I think I get it. So to me, it's just one long continuum. It took me a while to get to this understanding. I started off with the spirit body dichotomy, if you will, for many years. And over the years of my experience, I've learned that it's really a continuum. If I wasn't in the energy of my I am presence this moment, my physical being would cease to be, which is what happens when we call the event called death. The ray of light from the I am presence withdraws, the body then fades.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I that was well said, as always, on that. I think that I have a much less book informed, I will say I'm much less, I'm not as well read as you on this subject, and I can only go by off of what I have felt and what spirit has shared. And it is that everything you said is correct and like resonates, and there's this huge resonance when you speak on that topic, resonating spiritually. Again, I'll just share something I say a lot, and what that means to me is that's when you feel that ease, you feel no resistance to it. It feels like a knowingness. It's like you're being reminded of something you already knew at some point. It's like, yes, you've sparked a memory rather than new information coming in. And that's kind of that spiritual resonance of something that is coming at a higher vibration. And so that happens on that. The other thing that I've noticed is that on the mind body soul connection, when I'm doing healings with people, or I don't do the healing, spirit just does it, and I vessel that whole thing. But when that is happening, you can see how much of ailments and illness and pain, especially chronic conditions, is a blockage in the mind of the divine energy, divine consciousness flowing freely through the vessel. And so when something sparks within the mind, a release of a thought of this can't happen or this won't happen. It's not possible. This happened, and I have this condition, I have this diagnosis. There's no changing it. When there's a shift in that, there's a massive shift in health. Now, that's not going down the path of miraculous, spiritual, God, divine healings, where someone jumps up out of a wheelchair. But in chronic conditions of pain, I see tremendous shifts when somebody is able to tap into the spirit side of their own energy, which is, I've come to know it as the soul self, which is just another word for like the higher self some people use. And it's the part of us that is untouched by the way of human life. And it's always there. It's always with us. They feel separate at times, but it's us just living physical and non-physical at the same point of now. And that part of us is always infinitely, eternally connected to the divine flow. And so the more we can tap into that part of us, the more health our physical vessel can see, and the more health our monkey mind can see, right? It can quiet the chatter when we begin to tap into that and hear statements that are like, this part of me has been created by the same source that creates entire worlds, entire galaxies. It just helps to allow that flowing energy to realize that while we are in this small vessel, we are so much bigger. And then I think when we stop seeing the walls, the skin walls of us as a border, then we can become bigger, we can expand, and more of that energy can flow in and out.
Yeah, I agree. Just to go back for a moment, yeah. My knowledge is based on personal experience. Yeah. What I have discovered is that if I read something, yeah, I can get the ideas, but then later when I experience it, there's an aha moment that, oh, that's what they were talking about.
Yeah,
I get it now. And so it's sort of a two-pronged approach. In Buddhism, they talk about theory and practice. The theory informs the practice, and the practice informs the theory. As far as the healing, I'm in complete agreement. I sometimes think of it like a kink in a hose. Yeah. When the hose has a kink in it, the water doesn't flow. When I do etheric healing on an individual, first of all, it's not me doing the healing. It's my I am presence flowing through and touching with their I am presence to draw the energy down. And I have seen some remarkable healings that way, where people had a condition that had been bothering them for days, months, even years. And in one case, a man stood up from the healing chair and left his cane behind. So it is possible that these aren't miraculous. These are natural. I completely agree with you about the fact that the divine, the infinite presence is flowing through us at all the time. And we put up these little blockages and we say, well, that's me. I have this. How often do you hear people say, my cancer? Wow, you're owning the cancer. That's huge. I can understand when you want to say something like, my body has cancer, my body is infected. Okay, that's a true statement. My true self can never be infected. It's always pure and perfect and whole. So when I do the healing, I work on sending energy into each of the energy centers along the spine, in the shoulders, the hips, the knees, wrists, and smoothing out let's say the wrinkles, smoothing them out so the lines of force, the lines of energy are straight and smooth in the back and in the front. And I find that works very well. Some people are a little difficult in receiving it, where there's some tentativeness, but afterwards people tell me, oh my goodness, one lady said, you know, I'd had this condition for years, and after you did that healing, it was almost gone.
Mhm.
But she never sat down for another healing when she came to church. Sometimes I think people are defined by their suffering. If I didn't have suffering, who would I be?
Yes. Yeah, I fully agree. I see a lot of people who are very much attached to their identity of pain or identity of illness,
Mm-hmm.
because it's become such a significant portion, a very real portion for so long, but it becomes so all consuming in their mind and in their daily life that truly they wouldn't know who they are without it. And that can
Yes.
be a barrier in itself. Um, yeah, that, or I was just going to share that the way that you do healings, part of this too is there's a lot of people who are watching this and are kind of tapping into their gifts and learning ways. So I think it's incredibly important for people early who are realizing that they have this ability to channel healing energy, that it is in no way us, right? We don't do any part of the healing. We are just allowing it to flow through.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I was just, the way that I do healing is also is very much different than allowing source or God or the divine to flow through. I work with a healing collective called Awiaka, which is what Spirit has shown. And Awiaka is this collective of normal people, regular people who were healers in body who have passed. And then I connect to them the way that I connect with guides when I'm doing a healing, and they come in, and it could be anyone from somebody who lived in the 1500s and realized that this certain poultice works on this kind of burn, or a doctor who passed in California in 2017. It's this huge collective, and they will step forward, and a lot of people can channel this group, and they are who provide the healing. They'll step forward and offer some of what they have learned from their human life, as well as then allowing the spirit energy to flow in from the divine consciousness of all.
Mm-hmm.
So it's part of that is that we all, again, on this path have our own unique way of doing this. And I urge people when they're seeking out assistance on healing of any form to find what works for you personally, because, you know, for one person, yours might be working beautifully. For someone, what I do works. And then for other people, none of this will work and they need a chiropractor. You know, it's
Yes.
just continue looking constantly, like always find what works for you. There's no right or wrong in this. It's your personal journey towards health.
For myself, when my body is feeling out of sorts, I start with energy, getting a better flow. Then I'll go to herbs
Mm-hmm.
and diet.
Yeah.
Kind of those two kind of go together. But for some things, I go to a regular doctor.
Mm-hmm.
If my arm is broken, I'm going to go to a regular doctor to get it fixed. They'll take an x-ray, figure out how to fix it, maybe put a cast on. But other things, I've had miraculous cures. Miraculous. There's no miracles in my life. But I've had extreme cures by using herbal medicines. One time I fell off a ladder and I hit my arm on the ground. And my wife gave me something called Yunnan Baiyao, a Chinese medicine, which is a powder. And she sprinkled it on a bandage and she put it down my forearm. You know, maybe the bandage was this wide. And then after 2 or 3 days, we changed it. And the place where the herbal medicine was healed. And all the places where the bandage didn't hit was purple from the bruise.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, so it's not miraculous, but it's very effective.
Yeah. Yeah, I've transitioned fully to essentially all Chinese herbal medicine and diet and, you know, food. And I've moved towards like a frugivore life, which is fruit and, you know, plant-based. And I feel a lot of people who are on this spiritual path end up gravitating that way as well. But as you said, when there's acute trauma, there's, you know, other medical practices that are suited for that. But long-term health, longevity, quality of life, I've seen many people find great success in herbal remedies as well. And yeah.
Yeah, herbal medicine's pretty amazing. When I was living in Taiwan, my wife got a cold and she went down to the local druggist, which are all traditional Chinese medicine, came back with some brown powder. And she and my daughter drank it for a few days, and I'm laughing up my sleeve. There is no cure for a common cold. Rah, rah, rah. And then my body came down with a pretty severe cold. Okay, I'll try this. Within 3 days, it was gone.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, okay, well, so much for my Western arrogance.
Yeah. Yep. We've had the same thing as we made the transition. We're like, wow, there actually is something that works. So I want to jump back to more of the spirity side of it, which is you at church, at the church that we both attend, do readings. And so again, kind of 10,000-foot level, I just wanted to hear from your side, I guess, first, what readings are to you and what that is and what you're, I guess, giving to people. And then how you're receiving what you're receiving and what it looks like. People always have these questions of like, well, what does it look like? What are you seeing? So if you could kind of share that from your
side. First of all, the church is Spirit Guided Friends Church in Portland, Oregon. I've been a minister there for about 6 years, 7 years, and I've been attending on and off since the mid-1990s. Readings are an interesting topic. I started doing what I called psychic readings at the time in the 1980s. I was a member of a spiritualist church in Redwood City, California. And because of my experience in meditation, I found that I was easily able to tap in to the energy of other people. And I did tarot card readings for many years. For me now, at that time, my reading was more about the individual. I found I had an ability to link in with the other individual and then let my mind become still. Some practices, they'll say, see a blank screen in your mind as if you're looking at a blank movie screen and just look at the pictures. But because of my meditation practice, I was able to still my mind enough where the images and sensations, not so much physical sensations at that time, but the thoughts and emotions of the other people would appear. And then a lot of times I would give just common sense advice. What to me was common sense was not immediately available to a lot of people. About, 25 or 30 years ago, I came into contact with the I Am activity in Oakland, California, and I learned to attune to my I Am presence, my divine self. Now, when I do messages or readings for people or even healings, the first thing I do is I align my personal self with the I Am. And then I link my I Am presence to their I Am presence. So now we're in harmony at a high spiritual level. And then allow their I Am presence to show me what they need. What is it that's most useful to this person at this time? And I used to feel like I had to censor some things. And now I've learned that the censoring is my ego saying, oh, no, it can't be. As opposed to now I just, okay, this is what I'm seeing for you. Most of the time I see symbolic imagery, and I've become, through the study of my own dreams and my own thought processes and emotional processes, become pretty good at interpreting symbolism. It's as if the whole message is delivered in a small little package, and then bit by bit, it has to be opened and unfolded and unfolded. And each unfoldment leads to another thing and another thing and another thing until it's fully laid out. And so I deliver these messages in that way. Well, here's a little bit, here's a little bit. And then as I'm delivering, then I can deliver more because it's being unfolded. I always deliver messages with my eyes closed. The human face has what are called micro expressions. They happen very quickly. I've been seeing them almost my whole life. And a lot of psychics use those micro expressions as clues of where to take their message next. So they think, oh, that person responded to that. Now I need to take this. Okay, now I can work on this theme. I don't want to do that. I want to deliver what I'm receiving. And while I'm delivering, I am also allowing my I am presence energy to surround me and fill me so that radiation is touching the people around me as well. And many times a message that's delivered for one person was also important for another person. Oh, I kind of had that going on too. And I also discovered that on different days, there's even a theme. I'll do 4 or 5 messages and they're all on kind of a similar theme. It's like, okay, wait a minute. And I always pause. Am I doing this or is spirit doing this?
Yeah.
And as long as spirit is doing it, it's like, okay, it's like Jesus said that I'm not the doer, it's the Father in me. His word for spirit. So a reading is something a little bit longer. And I usually start with these kind of intuitive messages, and then I will work my way through the person's lower self. How is their health? Is there anything physical that I need to share? Are they doing something? Their actions? Is there something they're doing that needs some attention? Is there something in their emotions, something in their thoughts? Is there something in their environment, their job? And kind of use that as a key to do a general inquiry. A three, what do they call it? A full metaphysical.
Yeah, no, that was great. I noticed a lot. One, this is another thing where I think we all do it differently and we're meant to do it differently, which I've noticed with people who do readings. There's very different, distinct styles, and those are there for a reason. Because
yes.
I think we all kind of come down in these cohorts and these groups, whatever soul tribe things, But I think that we come down with these different methods and means and abilities to share and all of that for a reason, because again, divine guidance. I think we're going to get matched up with the people who need the stylized version of a reading that we can give. And I find that. So that's again where I say, like, if you're searching, if you're, seeking some sort of a reading, find someone who is offering what you are seeking, right? And so I always say I'm 100% not a psychic. I'm a medium. I don't claim to be psychic in any way. And I know that I see people who are not in body, and that's my thing. And then I connect to guides. So if you're looking for psychic, go find a psychic, right? There's people who have these things, and everybody out here has like this, it's this beautiful mixing pot of connections to spirit. With that said, though, there's very notable commonalities that I saw. And what you were saying is you connect your I am presence to their I am presence. The way that I do it is I let my guides connect to their guides. And I see this a lot with people who have really good, substantial, like quality readings, if you will. It's that there's always this linking process of you're linking to some part of that person, or the guides are linking, or some people do angel readings where angels link, whatever it is, there's that link, because then it gets us out of the way. And that's like the biggest part, I think, for people who are, again, I'm kind of speaking to people who are starting out doing on this path of realizing that they have this connection where they can do readings. It's make sure that you're getting yourself out of the way and knowing that you're not doing it. You're linking to something else that is. And then also what you said about the piggybacking kind of thing of like you see this theme throughout the readings. I see this I'm in group readings where like once somebody's mom will come through, then it's like a mom party. And then or it's, you know, a child, and then it's like a bunch of kids will come through, and it's they do that because it's like once you kind of open it, then it's this floodgate sort of thing. But yeah, I think that really when we're doing these readings, it's that I just use the broad term spirit, which to me is kind of everything that is out there with a consciousness and is sentient without a physical vessel. So that's what spirit is to me. And that they're essentially stepping in and sharing what somebody is seeking, whether it's on a conscious level or not. So I always say that, you know, what comes through might not be what is necessarily what you're looking for or what is most desired, but it's what is there for the plan of health. So again, real quick on that, one of the biggest things that I do during readings is make sure that they're grounded and protected. Because I very intentionally do not open this up to like whatever wants to come through. I do see that there is a danger is a sharp word, but I'll use it like a danger in doing that, whether that's to us, because too much can come in, or it just is, it's not grounded enough to get a clear image. So I was wondering if you have a practice or a method to keeping it grounded and protected and high and bright and light and all of those things so that it's for health and healing.
Well, for healing, one of the first things I do with a person is in invoking their I am presence is drawing that energy down into the body and then down into the earth. The physical planet is based on an etheric plan, so to speak, like an etheric blueprint, of which a crystal is the primary piece. This is what Plato was getting at with the solids, the 12 solids, I think they were called. Well, they're geometric solids. So I do that in healing. For readings, I always take a moment before I start. Now, like I said last week in church, I'm just amazed at the speed at which you deliver. But for myself, it's a slower process. I pick up stuff all the time around me, and I've learned to insulate my personal space from the external space. So when I come to give a message to a person in church where there might be as many as 20, I've even done 30 people at once, well, not at once, but in one session, is I'm in that quiet space. And then when I say to an individual, may I come to you? And then I'm silent for a moment. And that silence helps the other person also become silent and quiet. And then they feel that radiating from me. And then my next sentence is, when I touch with your presence today. Now, for me, it means I'm touching with their I am presence, but for them, it might mean that I'm just touching with their physical presence. But something was transmitted from me to the other person, and not in a harmful or a manipulative way. It's just the radiation that comes out. And that radiation is calm and peaceful. I have this experience fairly often now where when I'm around other people and they're a little bit upset, they feel that and then they become calmer. When I'm in a grocery store and I hear a child crying, I go over to the aisle where the child is crying, and of course, mom is busy trying to buy food for dinner. And the child is feeling, nobody's paying attention to me, and I'll just stand and look the child in the eyes for a moment or two, and they become quiet. And then I can move on. So that's my grounding practice, is if I'm grounded and I radiate that out around me, the world around me feels it. So in a reading, I'm directing that, but again, not in a manipulative way. I've come into contact with people that, yeah, they say they want a reading, but they're just really not open to it. And it's like, well, there's nothing I can do for you.
Mhm.
Like, okay, that's okay. Somebody else may be just perfect.
Right. Yeah. No, I think that, yeah, I've noticed that when you are doing readings, that it does, you set kind of the tone, and then that allows people to become more open. Whereas, yeah, like you were saying, I go fast.
Yeah.
It doesn't really fit, so there. And I think part of that is I don't see symbols. I mean, occasionally I do, but I truly kind of I either hear the words or I see it, and to me it looks like words kind of being shown on like a computer on a typewriter.
Uh-huh.
And so it's like I'm following along with the words. And so that's why it's fast. I'm not unwrapping a symbol, which sometimes I think might be better for the thing rather than me like spitting out a paragraph.
Well, I think people really appreciate it. So many people want to hear about their friends and family in spirit, and it is a unique ability to be able to do that with such accuracy. And I think a lot of people are greatly comforted by that.
Yeah, I think that I always say it's ironic because I don't get to see and feel my own people much at all. It's kind of this, cosmic joke where I get everybody else's people in spirit. But I think that if nothing more, what it's doing is it's helping remove fear.
Yes.
It's releasing. I mean, that's kind of the goal in all of this, is to help reduce the fear and the anxiety of what seems to be the unknown, but many people now are starting to know, which is that death and by no, in no way is the end. It's simply just kind of a closing of a chapter. And then there's so much beyond. I was wondering real quick if you, not real quick, I mean, we have got about 10 minutes, but when I said that, you had some really, some of the most, I would say, understandable insight on reincarnation, if you would like to get into that for a minute, when you shared that lecture a few weeks ago.
Oh, that was the lecture on theosophy and the worlds and the root races.
Yeah, I don't know if you can do a kind of.
I'm going to do it again this week because it's such a huge topic.
So I wonder if you could just maybe give people topics that they could research, because this truly, I've always, this is a truth that I now know, again, just from my personal experiences, that reincarnation is very much real and that we go around many times expanding as a soul, all of that. But I've kind of wondered about the process and how, how many times we do it and who we're doing it with and all of that. And you provided some topics that I was able to research, and I've kind of got more clarity on that than I ever have. So
reincarnation to me is connected to the planet's path. So we come from the high spiritual levels, and bit by bit we incarnate deeper and deeper and deeper into matter. By degrees, we go from a very spiritual state to a denser and denser state, and then after that densest state, the planet begins to evolve back toward its spiritual self. And there's humanities on every one of those 7 worlds. There's 3 going down, the 4th is the material, and 3 going back up to the spiritual. There's a humanity that incarnates in each of those worlds, because we are destined to become godlike. God permeates everything from the most spiritual to the densest material. And our path is to become that way so that we can operate from the most spiritual to the densest physical. So we incarnate to get that experience by degrees. And then as we evolve back out of the dense to the spiritual, we're able to actually act and apply all those things in a concrete way. Reincarnation then becomes a process of each of us learning what we need to learn at each one of those worlds, world 1, 2, 3, 4, and then on the return path 5, 6, 7. Now, if we don't learn our lessons in the time allotted, then we're taken out of the cycle because we can't move forward with the rest of humanity. I've heard 10 billion souls associated with the incarnational planet of the Earth. And some of those souls aren't going to be in the right place spiritually when the Earth makes its evolution from world 4 to world 5 on the upward plane. And they are separated off for a time. Maybe they're put on another planetary system at that level. But for us as humans, we're designed to absorb this knowledge, understand it, and then apply it. Reincarnation then becomes a question of how we can best come to learn that information. People call it lessons, but I don't like that word because it sounds too didactic. It's too much like going to school. It's really a process. It's more like how a moth becomes how a caterpillar becomes a butterfly. That butterfly, when it goes into cocoon, goes completely liquid and then reforms itself. And that's what we're to do. And by degrees, we learn how to do that. As far as who we reincarnate with, humanity now has a big problem with negative emotions. And so we inflict harm on one another, emotional, physical, mental. And sometimes we have to reincarnate to make amends with those people. Both of us have to come to terms. Sometimes we come to learn something new. My personal belief is that we choose our circumstances to some extent, and to some extent they're dictated. We have some constraints because of where we've been and what we've done. There are some constraints we can't get out of, but there are also things that we can choose. One of the most interesting things, I read this in an Edgar Cayce book, and it really resonated with me, was that some people choose to be born into, let's say they're born into a deformed body. And they chose to do that because they needed to learn about dependence. They were so independent before and they could always do everything, and maybe they were a little arrogant. Now they said, well, I need to learn how to depend on another person. It wasn't that they did something evil. It was that they needed to do this for their personal growth.
Right. Yeah, no, I was just going to say within that too, again, I kind of do my best to kind of go off of what I'm seeing from spirit. I read all kinds of things and take it at face value, and then I like kind of let it sit and do that. What I felt, again, a lot of resonance in that is that, yeah, we do have quite a bit of choice before. I'm not sure if I fully am on board with the full soul contract kind of theory.
Yes.
But there's a lot of choice. We do choose a lot. And then very much, as you just said, I think that not so much lessons. I think it's that we're coming in to gather the experiences. We're meant to have so many different experiences. And like you said, dependence, rather than, perhaps there's some theory out there that person was, evil or malicious in the lifetime prior. And so then they were born into this hardship, which may be the case, we don't know, but
yes, we don't.
Yeah, I see that as well, where it seems that some of the circumstances are more to gather knowledge and experience, and have different insight and kind of just expand the perspective of the soul.
Well, for me, it's made me less judgmental. It's like, I can't judge that person's life experience. I don't know why they did this or how. Just let them be them.
Right. Yeah, I think that what you're saying too, we are, again, another theory is that we're kind of in the midst of like a pretty big shift in consciousness and whatever. A lot of people, as this is called an ascension chat, right? A lot of people are feeling that ascending of like this giant kind of collective consciousness shift. Where does that fit in? And within that, does it at this point? I'm curious. Like I'm trying to learn.
The way I see it and understand it is the planet is moving from world 4 to world 5. It's starting on the upward track. Now, these things don't happen overnight. It's not like a door opens and a door closes.
Yeah.
This is going to take a long time. It's like the Earth moving around the sun. It doesn't happen in one day. It happens in 365 days. The Earth is moving on to its next phase. And bit by bit, as it does that, the energy in and around the planet is changing. And some people will react to it harmoniously and some won't. To me, this is an incredible time for spiritual development because there's so much spiritual energy available. And there's other people, when this spiritual energy hits them, it causes them to act out in weird ways because they're kind of resisting it.
Right.
They're fighting back. And because they're fighting back, it's going left and right and up and down and causing a lot of instability.
Yeah, for sure. I think that, yeah, that kind of leads into where I wanted to go, which is that if you're sort of feeling this, which nearly everybody that I talk to, again, I'm in the spirity woo-woo circle now, but nearly everyone that I talk to is feeling this. And some people are feeling it as, again, this kind of bliss, and they're connecting to guides and their mind is expanding and they're feeling connected to the earth. And then others are having trouble. They're struggling. They're feeling bodily pains. They're feeling giant mood swings. They're getting really tuned into kind of the more negative side of the collective narrative, which is, pain and fear and doubt and all of those things. So I guess I'm wondering, just from your side and perspective and wealth of knowledge, what could those who are starting to feel the pains of growing pains, how can they start to maybe integrate and incorporate and sort of let that flow in more freely?
So what I recommend is a simple meditation that was taught by the Buddha. Sit down. It doesn't have to be in a lotus position or on the floor. Sit in a chair. Sit with your spine up. You don't want to be laid back, but sit with your spine up, breathing normally. Count your breath. When you breathe in, count 1. When you breathe out, count 1. Breathe in, count 2. Breathe out, count 2. And continue to 10. When you reach 10, go back to 1. If you count past 10, go back to 1. If you forget the number you're counting, go back to 1. If you fall asleep, when you wake up, go back to 1. There's no right, there's no wrong, just counting the breath. And one of the things that happens is the body becomes very relaxed. And just in that relaxation alone, so many things will resolve themselves. People that are having a lot of tension all the time, their body relaxes. I've had experiences with this where something would let go and I go, oh my goodness, I didn't even know that was tense. When people lose track of the number, usually what's happening is they're starting to see dreamlike images. Their subconscious is starting to let go. And so it's like a dream, and the subconscious is starting to release and starting to release, and then come back to the number, and you're in a different spot than you were. This is the simplest approach. I teach a meditation class that's based on this, but it also includes some other practices with the I am presence, the violet flame, the blue flame, white light, to help with some deeper energetic things. It's mostly the more pure energy we can bring in, it's just like it just forces everything out. So it's like having a glass of muddy water, and you just keep putting clear water into it, clear water into it, clear water into it. And pretty soon, all the muddy water comes out over the side, and all you have is clear water in the glass. The biggest problem that I have discovered that people have is they get impatient. Well, I've been doing it for a week. Okay, well, come back after you've been doing it every day for a year.
Yeah.
and then compare who you are today and who you are now. I've been teaching a Saturday meditation class now for 3 years, and it's the same group of people, and they don't realize how much they've changed until I start pointing things out to them.
Yeah.
There was one person who fell asleep every single time, could not stay awake, and now that person can stay awake for the whole hour and 15 minutes. The next step for that person is to be able to work on the visualizations. I don't use the word visualize, I just say, see this. So for instance, if I say, see a banana, nobody has a problem seeing a banana in their mind. If I say visualize a banana, oh, that word is like, oh,
Yeah.
it's like a block, and it's not, well, it's the same thing, but imagine a banana. Right? It's from the word image.
Mhm.
So that to me is the entry point. And if people are sincere and persevere, they will be led and guided to other practices that will be appropriate for them. That's been my path. I've had 4 different teachers over the course of the last 40 years. And each one had something specific to offer me. But then I reached an end to what that was for me. And in a little while, somebody else appeared. So that would be my recommendation for people just starting off.
Yeah.
Do the simple practice. Be patient. Patient with yourself.
Mhm.
Once that patience sets in, you'll get a little bit of inner peace. The turmoil will start to calm down, and then that will radiate out into the other aspects of your life.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's beautiful. That's a great one. My 2 that I always recommend to people early on is to every day go step bare feet on the earth for at least 90 seconds, because the earth very much is able to help us regulate, and is also like I'm very much a believer that the earth has a consciousness as well, and it is very much tuned into what's going on. So just go step out barefoot and let your energy match to the earth every day. And then 2, I'm a huge proponent of cold showers. So take an icy cold shower for 2 minutes every day and make your life change.
Boy, I guess.
Yeah.
The first change would be actually doing it.
Yeah. No, it's wild how much it affects the way that your mind works. So those are, yeah. So I'd asked you if you could bring some books or book titles that people.
Well, I can, and if you'll allow me to share my screen.
Sure. Yeah.
I
think, yeah.
Host disabled participant screen sharing.
Let's see. So.
Yeah, it's not letting me do it. Well, I'll tell you what, let me say the names of the books.
I was going to say, how about you say it, and then I'll share the sources too in the comments.
Okay. So these books are called the Joseph Communications. Joseph is in the name. And there's 4 books in a series that I have read repeatedly. They're very good. They're channeled information through a medium. They're dictated to a tape and then transcribed. The first one is called Revelation. The second one is called Illumination. The third one is called Your Life After Death. And the fourth one is called The Fall. Now, these books are called under the Joseph Communications, and the organization is called Band of Light, Light. There's some more books in the series that I've read, but those first 4 are pretty remarkable. Revelation and Illumination, the first 2, give a basic layout of reality and our God nature and some meditation practices. Your Life After Death talks about how we experience life after we have given up the physical body, the different places we can go to, the different types of experiences. The book The Fall talks about how the earth became the way it is with our, let's say, layer of negative emotions all over everything. Why we're not experiencing the divine plan here and now. It's a very profound book, and even a little bit difficult to accept. But I've read it 4 times. I've read Your Life After Death 3 times, and the other, Revelation and Illumination, I've read twice. They're that good.
Wow. Yeah. I've never even heard of them. That's fantastic. Yeah. I will definitely look into those for sure. And I'll share the titles and the author then for other people to check out as well.
Okay.
Yeah. So I just would like to close by asking you, if you're comfortable sharing, what your most beautiful, or I guess remarkable or life-changing, whatever you want to go with, experience with spirit has been.
Well, I'm going to go with kind of wonderful and beautiful.
Yeah.
I've been with my current teacher since 2004, and she sponsored week-long retreats or 10-day retreats twice a year in the spring and at the winter solstice. And in one of those, we each take, well, she sat in one chair and then there was a circle. And in one of those, she would say, would you take the chair, which was where she was sitting? And she would give some suggestions. And in those, then I had experiences of the divine presence, both my I am presence coming down into my physical body, and also being transported into another realm. And it was just so, the love energy was so powerful. I just felt like my heart was expanding and expanding and expanding. It was wonderful. I saw a series of visions, each one different, and each one open more, open more, open more. And the tears were running down my face because my heart center was so open. They weren't tears of joy. They weren't tears of sadness. When the heart center opens wide, the tears just come. I've had this experience when I was at church giving a lecture. I would start and just come in and just, oh, and completely immobilized, unable to speak because the power of love is so overwhelming. So those have been my most profound experiences over the last 9 or 10 years. It's been more than one.
Yeah, that's incredible. And I hear people describe similar things where it's, there's really no words you can even put to how beautiful it is, and the, I guess, almost euphoric feeling that you get when you tell that.
So in the Gospels, there's frequent statements where it says Jesus wept. And I always thought it's because he was unhappy. No, it's because that divine love was pouring in and he was expanding with it to such an extent. He was just transported. So.
Yeah, I've never read that way either. I mean, I heard that way. That makes sense.
Yeah. And then the first time when my heart center really opened up and the tears started to come, I said, oh, I get it now.
Yeah, I know. It's hard to pick one for me, but it's the same thing where you can just feel, I mean, for me, a lot of the most beautiful ones are when you see someone who's passed reunite with their loved ones. And every time it's just, I think that, I'm whatever, the tears are because it's beautiful, but it's also because it's so, there's just such a, I don't know, magnanimous, huge energy behind it that you can feel, where it's just, you're not seeing this connection of one person meeting their 3 loved ones. It's, you just feel this intense, massive kind of celebration of a reunion that is, it truly feels sometimes like a chorus of angels are singing, and it's bigger than you can even describe. And it's seeing and feeling that it really is celebratory event, and that it deserves to be treated more as, essentially a party of, like, you finally kind of achieve this reconnection and peace. Those are truly beautiful.
Yes, it is. I had a dream once about my grandfather. He was making his transition from the lower realms to a higher realm. And he was waiting at the train station, and then I came up and he said, "Oh, Grandpa!" And I was just like a little kid jumping up in his arms again. It was just that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's bigger. It's bigger than we can even describe.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for taking time to share your wisdom and your knowledge and your energy. I know that people will really appreciate it, and you have such a unique insight and perspective on all of this. Is there anything else that you would like to share with people before we head out, for especially people who are watching this, or just starting out? So I think that,
well, I guess the most important thing to know is that the divine presence is everywhere at the same time. And if we weren't held in mind by that presence, we would cease to exist. We're not separated from it. It's there all the time, even if it doesn't seem like it.
yes, that's beautiful. Over and over, I keep hearing separation is an illusion. And that, yeah.
Well, I have a saying that man's extremity is God's opportunity. Only when we reach an extreme do we tend to turn to our last gasp. Well, I can't figure this out. I'll leave it up to you. God help me.
Yeah.
I did that once. I was in Houston, Texas. I was living on the street pretty much, but by design. And I spent the whole day trying to find some work so I could make some money. And I finally gave up, and I'm sitting outside the city mission with my head in my hands, sitting on the sidewalk. And this guy drives up in a truck and he says, "Hey, you want to go to work?" And the guy said, "Who, me? Who, me? Who, me?" And I looked up and he said, "Yeah, you. Do you want to go to work?" Because I had just finished. Said, "Well, God, I've done everything I can." And a few minutes later, this guy drives up in a truck, puts me to work.
Wow. That's one of those things too, where it's just at the moment we kind of stop forcing it or stop trying to put pressure on it, that's when it comes,
Yeah. Who knew?
Yeah, funny how that works. And we know that, and we still can't do it.
I've become more skilled at it. I don't know about better, but more skilled. They say, "Oh, okay, I'm the one pushing the boat here," when the boat just needs to be put in the current.
Yeah, it's definitely, I think, strengthening a muscle. You got to practice and also unlearn the habits of thinking that everything needs applied force.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. This has been wonderful. I appreciate it so much. And I look forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you, Gabrielle.
Yes. Bye-bye.
Bye.